we continue to believe that there is an economic benefit to all three countries to bring greater certainty to the free trade arrangement between the North American partners. We continue to believe, as do the Mexicans, that the sectoral tariffs that the United States have applied in steel, automobiles, aluminum, softwood lumber are causing considerable economic discomfort in all three countries and having a negative effect on consumer prices in the United States.
That is Dominic LeBlanc, of course, our lead, if you will, in these trade talks with the U.S. So what he's referring to there about we believe this and we believe that is, given the fact that the USMCA agreement, the CUSMA agreement, was not yesterday, was July 1st, that was the deadline, was not necessarily renewed by the U.S. They kind of walked away from this. We basically are exactly where we were when this whole thing started under Donald Trump. The tariffs in place remain. And so does this agreement, by the way. It doesn't go away. Julian Karaguesian served in the Canadian Ministry of Finance and the Canadian Embassy in Washington, now a professor of economics at McGill, and he is on the line. Julian, thanks for coming on. And so, look, I guess it's important to just clarify, just because the U.S. decided to walk away and not renegotiate doesn't really change anything in this deal for the time being, does it?
It doesn't change anything right now because 90% of the goods we ship down to the United States are going in tariff-free. But as that intro from Minister LeBlanc suggested, we still have these sectoral tariffs in place, which are being challenged in the courts, but they're in place right now, and they're really hurting those industries in Canada: automotive, lumber, steel, and aluminum.
So this does not necessarily prevent this idea that this deal has not been renegotiated. It doesn't prevent the U.S., if they wanted to, from going ahead and deciding to, tariff something tomorrow, even if it's in CUSMA, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I mean, they could also, you never know with this administration in Washington, they could also decide to renew it if they get the terms they want for another 16 years. But so nothing changes from where we were before. The problem is, and so the good side is that 90% of goods are going in tariff-free. The problem is that it doesn't create a lot of certainty for investment, and investment is the trade of the future. Right. So I don't see a lot of huge investments taking place in Canada for the North American market until this is sorted out. But in terms of trade today, nothing really changes.
I guess I would ask the first question, we've been talking about the July 1st date now for so long. Were you surprised by what ended up happening here with the U.S. just deciding, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to renew this. What for?
Yeah, no, I wasn't surprised. I was in fact, I don't think it took a lot of foresight on my part to not be surprised. I thought from the beginning, why would they, given how they're behaving, and given that they're turning to a more aggressive posture to squeeze concessions out of their allies, basically, because they can't do it from their adversaries. Their adversaries are too strong, so they're squeezing their allies. Why would they then commit themselves to a 16-year renewal when they could keep us hopping or try to keep us hopping every year, Canada, Mexico, and other countries? But in this case of NAFTA, CUSMA, they can just keep us under the gun, so to speak, every year with an annual review.
Yeah, it's interesting to note as well, and I think we may have touched on this at the time, even though Canada hasn't really been able to make any headway here, there's been a lot of saber-rattling going on right from the U.S. side. It seems Mexico and the U.S., they've actually met, that's what we're told, many more times than we have. What does that signify, do you think?
I think it signifies a couple of things, Aaron. One, we're obviously a big, rich country. We have much larger endowments of natural resources and energy than Mexico does. But Mexico is a bigger country. There are 130 million people. And the two countries are more dependent on each other than the U.S. establishment, the U.S. liberal establishments, the neocons, Hollywood movies would suggest. Mexico's a big country. It's industrialized over the last 25 years, and they've become a very large economy, and they purchase a lot from the United States. So they have some cards to play. Also, it seems President Scheinbaum is giving in a little bit, or she says she's going to give in, on the issue of importing actually even producing Chinese electric vehicles in Mexico. She's signaled to the Trump administration that she's willing to compromise on that. So I think those are two of the factors.
So if that's the case, it almost makes me wonder, Julian, whether the U.S. could simply go ahead, cut its own deal with Mexico outside of the CUSMA agreement, and just do business that way if they wanted to.
They could. It's very possible. I find it difficult though to see Mexico, given that it's got linkages all over the world, and Guadalajara. Mexico itself has become the seventh largest automobile producer in the world. A lot of that was on our back. A lot of our industry moved down to Mexico. No fault of the Mexicans. It was part of NAFTA, and the U.S. automobile companies shifted their production down to Guadalajara. But it's hard for me to see Mexico becoming part of like a fortress North America, Mexico, U.S., and signing a deal that commits them to deeper integration with the U.S. because they have a thriving trade with the global South, with China, with Brazil. So I don't think they would want to give that up.
Okay. Then I guess the other thing I would ask, given this, I don't know if we call this necessarily because you said this kind of what we expected, given the fact there's been so little progress that we've noted up until now. But given the situation that we're now stuck in for the next little while, the Prime Minister has made it a point pretty regularly to talk about doing deals with other countries, and he's done. And we know he's traveled probably more than anybody else imagined he would. Is this, so far from what you've seen, an approach that's working? Are we getting that business?
It's interesting. You had the hawks, the China hawks and the India hawks saying, well, that's going to fail for a couple of reasons. First, we have to create a fortress North America. And second, it'll take forever to diversify our exports. But the government of Canada released data on June 10th, annual updated trade statistics for 2025. And it showed that while our exports to the United States fell 6% in 2025, exports to the rest of the world increased by just as much. And so markets adapt, people adapt, companies adapt. And so I think that strategy is working. I think it'll continue to work if we pursue it. And also we have all these nation-building projects that are going to start to be visible in jobs and economic growth very soon. And Prime Minister Carney's cut a few deals on defense procurement, what we spend on defense with Saab, or he's negotiating deals with Sweden's Saab, with Italy's Leonardo for training aircraft, and with other European companies. I think a German-Norwegian consortium for submarines. So there's a big shift going on. We traditionally purchased this type of this weaponry and this defense equipment from the United States, and so we're shifting quite quickly.
It's obviously, we don't have a choice, right? When you stop and think about it, when you lose your major trading partner, or there are these kinds of restrictions put in place, you have to. Do you think we continue doing this? As this stuff seems to be working, as you're noting here, so we're doing this the right way, it would seem.
I think this is the right way, and I saw some data recently. I don't know how accurate it was, but it was an estimate of how much trade who Canada traded with in the 1920s. It was a snapshot. I think it was like 1920, 2 years after World War I. And it said that Canada traded 1/3 with the United States, 1/3 with the British Empire, the rest of the Commonwealth, and 1/3 with the rest of the world. And I don't think we're going to be able to get to that point where we're so diversified. But if we can, I think, like you said, we don't have a choice. And number two, I think for our sovereignty and for our prosperity, we have to spread out more and become less reliant on a single market, because we don't know what's going to happen down there. Right. I just don't see a presidential candidate from either party running on a free trade ticket next election.
We'll leave it at that. Julian, always appreciate the insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Aaron. Always a pleasure. You too.
Julian Karaguesian, on the failed, if you want to call it that, renegotiation of the CUSMA deal, which again, yes, nothing happened and the U.S. chose to walk away, but it's still in place and will be for the next 10 or some odd years.
Listen, and you're there for heart-wrenching knockouts,
world's biggest stage,
and breathtaking triumph. 2026 FIFA World Cup. The knockout stage. Every match, every moment. Listen on TSN Radio. Join the Globe on the road to the July 19th final. 2026 FIFA World Cup. Stream it all live on TSN Radio. Available on iHeartRadio.